That's tempting, isn't it?
Christian.
Hello, Clary.
I think by week 3, everybody realized that everyone down there, I mean, beyond affected, not just the coastline, not just the animals, but, you know, the people and the economy and the tragedy unfolding, everybody realizing this is going to go on and have an effect for 20 years, was really starting to impact everybody. So I signed up on volunteer websites to see if I can go and lend my weekends, because I thought at the very least I'm down here and I want to go and help those birds and help people, do whatever I can, and wasn't getting anything back. So I got in touch with a friend of mine, Matt Peterson, who works for Global Green, because he'd been very potent in the Katrina rebuild in sustainable housing and steering people towards clean energy, and so not depending on the governments, depending on ourselves as communities to figure out what we ourselves can do. And so I went and spoke to him last weekend to lend a hand, to educate myself, to find out how we ourselves can take responsibility, because we all have oil on our hands, and that's fundamentally the issue. It's a supply and demand thing. You know, as much as everybody's outraged about BP not doing this or governments doing that, I think that given that in 31 years nobody's figured this out, I think that that's enough of a kind of a beacon that we can't depend on them, and we have to look at our own addiction, as it were, to oil. And, you know, it seemed weird that I'm actually sitting down there in Louisiana discussing the addiction that my character has to blood, and I think, you know, about this thing addiction, and I'm like, well, I have my own addiction to oil. I drive a car. Or whether it's not, if you don't support local farms, and where are your blueberries coming from in the supermarket that have traveled from Peru, or the asparagus that's come from and the footprints that are left there, and how much that's going to cost in 20 years' time when we're running out of oil. And I think that people aren't quite realizing that this thing that we have really drained is not going to exist for too much longer. So we've got to come up with solutions. So the idea is to focus on the solutions. So we're working with communities down there to inform them of which ways they can best not rely on oil anymore. And it's as simple as growing your own crops. I know it sounds really primitive. People are going to have their own gardens. All around New York, people are growing their own gardens on top of roofs. Detroit, all those derelict houses, they've all got vertical gardens. There's a reason. People are having to look after themselves, and it's good. I mean, it's a really awful way to have to learn, and it's a really awful thing that our planet has to be destroyed as a result of us actually realizing that we've been spoiled. We've just been spoiled. This thing called oil, where we can just write a check and pay for our bills, you know, conveniently has been at the cost of our planet, and it's time to back it up a bit. Simplify.